So for this next part of the lesson, we're going to go ahead and do another drawings with separate little cue cards or pieces of paper that we can draw the panels on separately. So what we want to do with this one is we're going to draw one thing, just a simple action that is just going to be done within one panel, but we're going to draw that action over and over again with different points of view, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just start off, let's do a far away. Again, you can do whatever action, whatever kind of pose you want your character to have. It doesn't have to be anything meaningful at all. So I'm going to go ahead and do, start it off here. One thing within comics, it's always good to do points of view and horizon lines that are at a diagonal. That helps make it look a little bit more dynamic. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a simple line down here. What I'm going to draw is just a person sticking their hand into water when they're in a river, right? So this person is in a river. This is a far away shot. We see full body, so their legs are kind of cut off around here. We see some river water flowing around it. Their hand is in the water. They're bent over. Maybe their hand is on their hip. So I'm drawing something real simple here. Again, I'm not doing super details. So this person is bent over, reaching into the water. So now you can just draw like a little bit more, some more background stuff, have a little bit more fun with the water, like stream flowing by, rocks on the side of the shore, stuff like that. Maybe we even see they have a boat laying out here on the side of the river that they didn't put in the river quite yet, but you know, maybe there's some sort of fisherman, something like that. They got their boat here. Maybe they have a cooler here as well. We can just add in whatever kind of different things you would like to add in for the setting. The more things you add in for the setting, the better. So we can kind of change the point of view according to the views of those objects, whatever they may be, and whatever kind of action you show. So here's the side of the river. This is the water. Here's our character reaching down into the river. They got a cooler over here. They got a boat over here. There's some dirt. I can just go ahead and add some kind of like fun cross-hatching, whatever kind of textures you want to add to it, whatever. It's amazing. Whatever you can do is fine. We want to kind of fill this panel up as much as we can. So now I see my person here. Again, I'm not going to go super detailed with it. I'm not going to go ahead and ink it right away. You could ink it after we're done penciling this into the whole thing. So we see that this person is reaching down. So now we want to do a different angle. This is a far away angle. So we could go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and do a new one. Get a new panel going on here. So for this next panel, I'm going to go ahead and show a much more zoomed up close shot, right? So I'm going to do it kind of from the point of view of down by the water. So this is the water. This is his hand going into the water. The face is here. We're not even seeing like their whole body. Their arm goes off camera here. It's their one knee. Their other leg goes off camera as well. So we can kind of show the river's rushing and kind of splashing up around the hand. And maybe this person is looking down into the river. So they're reaching down in the river. We don't quite understand or know why they're reaching down into the river, what they're grabbing, what's going on. So maybe his tongue's sticking out a little bit. He's really concentrated. So we know from this first panel, we know there's stuff behind him, right? So I can go ahead. This is the side, really low point of view. So this is like the horizon line of the river down here. There's some rocks around there. So I know I could add like in a distance. You see the boat is over here. His head's kind of in the way. So we know he has a boat on the outside over there. And maybe we have such a low point of view. Maybe from here, in the far distance, we could see the silhouettes of trees. So when you do silhouettes of trees, you just do it completely blacked out. Usually the top of them kind of all meet up. You know, different kind of tree branches might be sticking out, stuff like that. Maybe there's a set of bushes in front of them. Especially when you're drawing nature things, you can really go far with it with just different bushes and trees and flowers and leaves kind of sticking out in front of each other, layering and staggering on top of each other. So we see he's in the river right here. He's bent over. He's looking down in the water. We don't understand what he's looking for exactly, but we see his arm is in the water. The water's rushing by him. But it's the same action, except we kind of zoomed in. So we had this big first one where we were far away. So we have a lot to work with. We can see what we're working with here. And then now we're kind of zooming in. We see this character's face. So now let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. So the initial first few different angles we could do is kind of the same angle, but we're zooming in each time. So this is a far away, medium shot. So now we can do a much more up close shot. So we see his shoulder reaching down. So this is kind of a big shot of his face. He's looking down into the river. Got a very concerned look on his face. So this is another really common shot, just kind of a big-headed shot. We see the look on their face, the concern, they're looking at the thing. So in the far distance, we have this area over here we could play with. So we know there's the boat in the background. The river's edge with the rocks. And then it just goes straight into the river down here. And maybe we can even go from black to like slowly build it up to white. And then up here, maybe just have a bit of a silhouette of trees and bushes as well. So we have an up-close shot of their face, but we see a slight, like, kind of foreground, middle ground, background with the background going on there. So that's our third shot. So we just zoomed in a bit with this one. We had a far away, a medium, and then an up-close shot. So we're zooming in. So now, this is the point where we can start playing around with the different angles, the interesting angles that we could work with here. So let's pretend we're on the boat, sitting on the boat, and we're looking over at this character, right? So when you do that, again, before I taught in previous lessons, you want to have a really hard foreground, middle ground, background, right? So for this one, I'm going to draw the hard foreground, the extreme foreground here is the inside of the boat. So this is kind of the hull of the boat here. We see there's rocks going on up here. Maybe we can even see part of the cooler that was sitting by the boat on the river. We see the river flowing. So now we're behind this character. So we're sitting right here, okay? And then so we're seeing this is the boat, and we're looking into the river, and we see this character. So we're going to show them from behind now. So now we see this character from behind. We just see the back of their head. We won't even be able to see their one arm that goes into the water because their body's covering it. Their other arm is kind of sticking out of the water. We know this is the river. It's kind of flowing around him. And we can just finish this up with drawing a ton of just river lines, stuff like that, right? But again, with your paper, you could be doing some sort of different action. It could be any kind of pose, wherever setting you want it to be. But now we're just changing the pose from showing from far away from this one, and now we're just turning the camera around, and we're going from a behind pose, right? So now we have a complete same scenario going on. A person reaching into the water, standing into the water of a river. They have a boat nearby. They're reaching their arm into the water. So now we want to just take it. We're moving the camera around to different objects and stuff in the scenery. So the next one I could do, we could just show what's actually going on in the river, right? So maybe in this one, I'm going to draw the hand of what he's doing in the river. So what is he doing in the river? Let's say he's trying to grab a fish. So for this angle, I'm going to just draw his hand really big. We're under the water right now. And we have a big fish under here. He's about to grab it. The fish is kind of looking up at the hand, being curious. What's going on here? What's this big thing? Is it predator? Is it prey? What's going on? It is going up. So we know it's in the water, so we got to kind of draw, this is the top of the water looking down. We see the bubbles reaching around the hand. So it's kind of like a hand coming out of a ceiling, but the ceiling is just the edge of the water. So whatever kind of details you want to do, go ahead and do any kind of finer details. So now we're just looking from a completely different perspective. We're underwater. We can add a bunch of bubbles, maybe even some swirly lines that cut through the hand and the arm itself. We know there's bubbles and flowing lines around the arm coming into the water itself. So now we have a completely different point of view. So we knew there's a character reaching into the water. We know what he's reaching into, but now we see what he's reaching into. We see the point of view of what he's reaching for, the fish. So now we see the hand. So we went from a faraway shot. We saw kind of the main scenario. It was questionable what's going on. Now we understand what's going on. This character is reaching for the fish. We see the hand under the water going for the fish. We know it was a person bent over in the river reaching for it, right? So let's go ahead and do a few more different angles. There's almost a limitless amount of angles we could do. I'm just going to try to do as many kind of popular angles as we can in this. So this one we're going to do more of a silhouetted angle. So it's a kind of a easy shortcut for some panels when you do comics. Using a silhouette, you don't have to do any kind of details because you're just drawing the outline of something. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to move the camera. So if we're going to use this as the basis of where the camera can go, we're going to move the camera right behind this person, right? So what we see here is the back of their head, and then their other arm is kind of, and then their shoulder, and their other arm is kind of over and sticking out like that. So all this is going to be black. Like I showed you guys in previous lessons, you don't have to go ahead and color things in black with a pencil. You do all that stuff when you ink. So to set it up, you just do a couple X's in it. So that just tells you, okay, I'm going to color all this stuff in black later, right? So we know this person's reaching into the water, and then this one we have rushing water. We're right behind this character. Maybe now we can even see the other side of the lake. So over here, you know, we could add, again, of the river. So we can, you know, rocks on the side of the river going on over here. Maybe we could just have like a bit of a tree line, something really simple. Maybe there's bushes over here, do a couple bushes. And then behind it, we have a tree line, silhouetted tree line for the other side of the river. So we have both of a silhouette as the foreground of our character reaching into the water. We see a lot of water action. You can draw that however you like, or whatever action you want to draw. But we're kind of looking down, so we see the ground, and then we go back into space. So the foreground would be our character silhouetted. The middle ground is the actual little ground that they're going into, and then the background is the silhouettes of these trees back there. So now we have a completely different angle. We're standing behind this character, right behind them, over their shoulder. We see the silhouette of them right there, right? So now we had a kind of simple idea of just the character reaching in the water, and we moved the camera around. So now we have 6 different angles so far. We're going to go for 2 more. Again, with our previous one with the baseball, we started with 1 or 2, we ended up with 8. We want to do 1. I'm just showing you all these different scenarios where we have 8 different angles of the same exact pose or action. This one being a person reaching into the water to grab a fish. So I'm going to move those over there to begin with. Let's bring out the initial one so we can kind of say, okay, where else can we show the angle point of view of the camera, right? So maybe I want to show a nice kind of cool up close shot of his arm going into the water and kind of a half shot of his face sticking out. So what I'm going to do is we see from this point of view, we're going to show the rivers coming and flowing around the arm. There's the arm. And there's our person, they're looking down, they're looking for the fish. Maybe they're, you know, a fisherman, a spear fisherman, or just a regular fisherman. They lost their fishing equipment. They're just doing it by hand. They want to challenge themselves maybe. So I'm doing a lot of emphasis on the actual hand in the water. So when you want to emphasize stuff, you could go ahead and just erase the idea of a background, and maybe I could just fill it up with action lines. So maybe even just we could start with a couple sweat lines coming out of him, or sweat beads coming off of his forehead. He's, or maybe it's not even sweat, it's just water because he's in the river. And I can just go ahead and draw a bunch of kind of action lines surrounding this character. And even within, around his hand going into the water. So you don't always have to draw everything in the picture. You could just kind of, again, like we did with the silhouetted one, you can do a little bit of shortcuts. This time we're not drawing backgrounds. We're just going to draw some action lines around it. And kind of draw action lines that emphasize what's going on. Maybe we even have an onomatopoeia in there. So sticking your arm in the water, maybe that sound effects is blub. So for this panel, we want to draw action lines, onomatopoeia. We want to emphasize some sort of action. It doesn't really matter where it is. We don't need to see all the background details. We understand what's going on. He's reaching his arm into water. We see lots of action going around, sweat beads coming off of it. It's emphasizing the action itself rather than the entire scenery. So now we brought it up, we're at 7. Let's just do one more for us. So we had this pretty far away one, right? So maybe we could even go even farther and farther back. Or now we could go ahead and just change the entire angle. So maybe this time we're looking downriver. Maybe we're way over here looking down at this character. So we could go ahead and start with our point of perspective here. This is the river. It's flowing. So maybe we see the character way down here. We could even do a silhouette of the character. So we see the characters way down the river. River goes up. We can draw the side of the river, kind of the rockiness of the side of the river, various lines of the water flowing through the river. We know this character has a boat sitting down over here, just kind of simple rowboat. I'm not going to be too fancy, no sails or anything like that, or like a canoe. They have their little cooler over here as well. And then way back in the far distance, we got bushes and tree lines and things like that as well. So this is another point of view farther down the river. We could have taken this shot. So if we stick with this first one, we're kind of standing over here looking down the river, and that's why we see them in the distance down here. We could have just turned it around completely, went way over here and looking up the river. It would just be a different diagonal, different angle of the diagonal as well. So now we could go over all these different ideas we went over. So we started off with the initial one, just kind of a far away view, and then we just worked our way into zooming up. We have like a middle section view, and then an up-close view. All these, we broke it down into like a middle ground, foreground, background. In the image, it has a bit of depth to it, right? So now we went from there to kind of changing the angles. So we could show from a behind on the boat point of view. We kind of had the same point of view, but now we're zoomed in behind the shoulder of this character. And again, they're silhouetted, but we have the middle ground, or the foreground, middle ground, background. And then we can completely change it up on us, change the perspective. Now we're looking at the hand going up. Again, we could have went the opposite way, looking down and see like the tippy top of his head, looking down into the water and seeing the top of his hand to grab a fish as well. We didn't do that, but there's always an idea of as to where to move the camera around. And then we went and we did one emphasizing the action of the actual panel itself, action of grabbing a fish. So now we have the big onomatopoeia, the action lines, the speed lines, the sweat bubbles, stuff like that. And then for the last one, we just changed the angle and went further away looking downriver. So whenever you do a simple action, try to just do a big, far-away shot, maybe even sketch it out before you put it into your page itself, and then think about where else can I place the camera. Maybe this is kind of boring. I want to change the camera, change it from here to there. Maybe I'll have the camera coming from that angle, this angle, whichever angle. So this is kind of the base that you always want to set yourself up with, a base that shows the setting of where the character is, so you know where they are, and then for you to decide where you want to put the camera to show where the viewers can look. So we started just with one point of view, and we ended up with 8. Again, this wasn't any kind of sequential action going on here. It's the same moment in time of this character reaching into the water and grabbing a fish, which is just a really simple thing. You at home or at wherever you are right now can be doing whatever action you please, whatever kind of scene or pose, but just really kind of make sure when you set it up an initial drawing of it, we have different kind of settings of foreground, middle ground, background, objects in the background, so we could kind of play around with where you want to put the camera. So that's it for this lesson, or this chapter in this lesson of changing the camera angles of a same image.